Hey everyone, my name is Sherwood once again, and welcome back to A Spiritual Journey. Now, I was thinking about what I should do this week in a spiritual journey, and it dawned on me that going forward, I'm going to be using a lot of different language and ideas that might be foreign to some people. So this week, I'm actually going to do a slideshow. It's going to cut to a slideshow in a little bit, and it's going to be what I've been taught during my travels, during my deep meditative practices, and what's kind of formed as this understanding of life, as the understanding of the cosmos. It's a parallel of different traditions to give us a common language going forward into the future. So if I bring up something like source or the astral plane or anything like that, you understand what I'm saying. You have that terminology to utilize and work with. So this week is going to be a slideshow. I hope you enjoy it, and it's going to be roughly around that half-hour mark, and I hope you learned something new. Hey everyone, and welcome to the slideshow. I call this the cosmic overview, and this is just going to be to give us a common language as I'm talking into the future. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. I always like to start with saying, be open. And I ask everyone to suspend any disbelief about the conversation that we're going to have until it's done. Some of you may like what you hear. Others may be challenged by it. My guess is that most of you, it's going to be a bit of both. So a large amount of people are not willing to even hear something new if it challenges their currently held belief. So just think of this like I'm telling you a story. It's a story about life, a story about the cosmos. Just listen, be open. And if you can, go back to that 5-year-old self. Sit in that beautiful place of infinite possibility. Sit with one of the most beautiful questions we can ask, which is, what if? What if this was all true? As we talk about spirituality. All right. So the spiritual philosophy that we are going to discuss is a merger of a few different religions and spiritual traditions. It's a blend of the heart of various traditions and how they parallel one another. So it's kind of that. It's just the heart. What are they saying behind all of the techniques, behind all the traditions? Now, I'm not claiming to know this from direct experience, nor am I telling you that this is the way things are. Like I said, it's a perspective, it's a story. And as we're beginning, I do want to point out that as important as philosophy is, it's never going to be the end all. So a good metaphor is like a fishing net. Philosophy at its best is the fishing net. It may catch fish, which are these lofty and grandiose intellectual ideas, but it will never be able to catch the water, which is the direct experience of the truth. Catching the fish, for many in the spiritual and religious world, they're content with that, to have that intellectual understanding, those deep principles. However, that's not my aim. My aim is to use these as a reference point and nothing more. Experiencing deeper truths is the only way to gain that true and lasting realization. So my goal is to experience and become the water, not to just try to catch fish with a net. Let's go ahead and dive in. So first we're going to talk about consciousness and energy. All things are made up of two things, consciousness and energy. Consciousness is the foundation where we perceive and we take in all things. There's a depth to our consciousness that is beyond the mind. It doesn't label, it doesn't judge, it doesn't do anything other than observe. It is the depth at which we are aware that we are. So the metaphor I like to use here is that of a video camera. The video camera takes in its surroundings, but it's not affected by it by anything, by what it sees, by what it takes in. It's just simply recording. Now, energy surrounds that consciousness constantly. So strictly talking about the energies of the individual person, there are several in this beautiful dance with consciousness at all times. There's energy in the body in motion or at rest, the heartbeat, the neural synapses firing, the internal processes of the organs and of the cells. On a quantum level, there are trillions of subatomic particles appearing and disappearing that make up the mass and space that is the body. There are also the energies of the mind, so thinking about thoughts here. They're energies of our surroundings, the chair you're sitting on, the computer, people we interact with, machines, technology, our environment, everything. All of it is just this vast sea of energy. All energy holds its own vibrational frequency. So we see this with the visible light spectrum, where the red is slower and longer undulating waves and the purple is shorter and faster. So solid objects also have vibrational frequencies. And the solid objects that we interact with in the physical plane, the 3D dimension, which you're going to hear me talk about the physical plane quite a bit, are densely packed enough to take on shapes that form whatever shape that they do. But there are also waveforms that we can see, such as the visible light spectrum, so it's not necessarily a solid form. Now, on top of that, there are vibrational frequencies that we cannot see, but we know are there due to different forms of measurement, such as radio waves and ultraviolet rays. We're very limited via our current technology to have an idea of how many other various frequencies that may exist that we can actually measure. So as we go forward, when we talk about higher dimensions, think of them not like the first three dimensions with the width and the height and the length, but rather like frequencies, vibrational frequencies that we don't interact with or we don't see regularly. All right, so now that we've done a little bit of kind of scientific understanding, we're going to go into the spiritual conversation. Our consciousness, the video camera, beyond the energy, has been called many things in various traditions. The one I'm going to use is the soul. The indestructible soul, untouched by the energies, is forever pure. No matter what experiences we have in life, the soul is always the same. It's that same, it just takes in. Soul lies both within and beyond the physical dimension and exists in all dimensions. It's the one constant beyond energy and vibrational frequency. So consciousness is the foundation of reality on every level. From there we have a mind. The mind, made of energy, exists outside of the physical dimension. It's not restricted by time or space. It can instantly access the past through memory or visualize and begin to create the future. The mind interacts with the physical plane, but it lies outside of it. It's on a different vibrational frequency. Now, this is an example that a lot of people do well relating to just because we all interact with it on a daily basis. So that's a good way to think of different dimensions. Is the mind, we can't see the mind. We simply hear it, but it's coming through us through a different vibrational frequency. I also want to say here that the mind that we interact with is very limited compared to its true potential. Next, we have an energy body, and one that's beyond the physical as well. Different traditions may separate out various energies into what they call bodies that we have, but we're going to just bring them all together to make it easier to understand. So this energy body is called the astral body. This body is made of various forms of energy, such as emotions, life force, so you might be familiar with chi or prana here, and light. Ancient traditions have been interacting with this body for thousands of years, from healing modalities, martial arts, meditation practices, and more. And lastly, of course, we have our physical body made up of bones, organs, muscles, etc. We're not going to be going into the amazing organic and biological complexities of the body, but I do have an immense awe and respect for how intricate of an organism that it is. All right, so as it has been said in the Abrahamic faiths, we are created in the image of God. Our soul, the untouched, pure consciousness, is a wave of the ocean. It is directly connected to the underlying consciousness that is within all things. It is not the entire ocean, but a part of it, never separate from it. Therefore, we are created in the image of the original consciousness, or God. Now, God is possibly the most stigmatized word across all human languages. If I say God to 100 different people, they're all going to have their own definitions, their own experiences. So it's for that reason, as well as a few others, that when I refer to the original consciousness that is within all things, I'm going to use the word source. Now, I don't only use source. Sometimes I use God. Sometimes I use spirit. Now, I use those synonymously. Some people separate out spirit into kind of like the Holy Spirit. But for here, if you ever hear me use spirit, source, or God, that's all source. Now, source lies beyond time and space. It's the very thing that brought life as we know it into existence. It is the original. It is the source of all things. Source simply is. It cannot be defined. The best way we can do it is to say that it is infinite ever existing, ever new, pure potentiality. It is the ocean, and the soul is the wave. We are one with Source, never separate from it, but we have momentarily risen out of it to have a human experience. Now, Source created mind first to begin construction of all that is in existence. So this dimension has been called the causal plane in the yogic tradition. It exists in a state of mind beyond what we can comprehend. It's a state of infinite potential manifestation also. This can be thought of as a place where the blueprints of creation were born. Mind is where all math, sacred geometry, music, and art in its highest and purest form originate. The challenge with describing this is that we inevitably think of this in terms of how we currently experience our mind, mostly through intellect and reason. But remember that the mind is more than just those things. It's creativity and expression embodied. It's the direct vibrational experience of the essence of the blueprints of life. This is the place where all thought originate and exists in its pure vibrational state. Source also created the astral planes. This is where energy started to become slightly denser and the blueprints of the causal plane began to manifest. Now, not all the way into the physical dimension yet, but started to manifest in different planes of the astral. There are several different frequencies within the astral, and where many different dimensions are said to exist. So it's not like this is just one place, this is several. The astral planes are far vaster than the physical. Some astral planes are energetic representations of the physical plane, kind of like a mirror or a mimic. This is also where we see reference to heaven and a place where energetic, angelic, or light beings might dwell. This is a place where our energy bodies, minds, and souls go after a lifetime in the physical plane. And once again, lastly, we have the physical. This is where Earth and our solar system exist in a dense enough form to make matter solid. This is also where I'm going to begin telling the story of samsara, which is the cycle of death and rebirth, which is rooted in various Indian religions from Hinduism to Buddhism to Jainism and more, and encompasses the purpose of life. It is said that Source created all things, beginning with the causal working towards the physical. In this process, vast amounts of energy were used to birth ideas, planes of existence, and life itself. Once Source birthed the physical universe, which holds all things that are physical, it was done in a beautifully designed and creative way. With this, time was also birthed because time doesn't exist without a beginning. Over what we call billions of years, but honestly not too sure of the true number because of the vastly limited understanding we have the true expanse of the physical, life began to form and evolve. As this happened, Source inhabited each form of life in different ways because consciousness cannot be separate from anything. It is in all things. So each stage of evolution brought a different experience of the play of consciousness and energy, from plants to animals to humans and beyond. So along with this, each individualized form that consciousness took began the journey of the soul and the journey of life. Once again, soul is not Source, it's a wave of the ocean, but the soul began experiencing different forms of life and experiencing its own creation. As each physical form of life dies, the soul returns back to the higher dimensions of reality, so the astral, causal, and eventually pure Source. In the cycle of samsara, the purpose of existence is to experience the various forms of life and eventually return back to Source. Being human is both an advanced form to be in as well as a primitive one. Living on Earth is only one of many humanoid experiences a soul can have throughout its cycle back to Source. We are only one planet in a galaxy that has billions of stars, in a verse that has billions of galaxies that, for all we know, is one verse amongst billions of others, making up an entire universe, or some people call this the multiverse. This gives the soul many different forms of intelligent life to experience in the physical plane alone, let alone different experiences within the astral. Most humans have forgotten their connection to Source and therefore their connection to themselves. And this is kind of where the curveball comes in. This amnesia is what creates suffering and the delusion that we are nothing more than our physical bodies. As our physical body dies, we, so the astral mind and soul, travel to the astral plane to continue our learning and eventually return to another physical body. According to various faiths from Christianity to Hinduism, this is where many who have experienced near-death experiences, or some might know those as NDEs, or those who speak of heaven, have traveled. The astral is an immensely large place with different vibrational frequencies within it. Not all who die go to the same place. The deciding factor is that individual state of consciousness, or another way to kind of say that is their level of understanding of the soul, determined by their actions in the physical form. So various traditions have called this karma, or it's the concept of you reap what you sow. In truth, we're here to remember our true nature, and along that path, we have many lessons to learn. Now, as some people leave their physical form, they might go into a long period of time in the astral and have work to do there and help people there, have maybe a higher mission there, and then they come back into another physical form. So it's not just one back to the other, one back to the other. They could spend a lot of different lifetimes in the astral before they come back to the physical. There's no set exact way per being. As lifetimes pass and as one spends more time in the higher dimensions, our soul continues to experience the various states of creation and continues to remember its true essence. So this eventually brings us back to yoga, or union with source, and yoga in Sanskrit translates to union. This is the goal of many spiritual traditions. This is true enlightenment, God consciousness, or self-realization. To reach this state in human form has been said to be extremely difficult, but not impossible. There are those who have done it and left their teachings behind as a road sign for the rest of us to learn from. So masters such as Buddha, Christ, Krishna, Babaji, and more have awakened to this truth and remembered their unity with Source. Each describes it also as waking up from suffering and ignorance. The peace, love, bliss, and joy that comes with the state of consciousness are far beyond the comprehension of the mind. It literally is outside of the mind's experience. It has been described as awakening also because our experience while in the amnesia is likened to being in a dream or an illusion. Truth or reality is something far more profound and greater than our experience in the physical plane alone. Experiencing direct communion with Source holds infinite potential and truth, infinite peace and love, infinite knowledge and understanding. Our experience in the physical can only be like a dream that we wake up from because of how vastly limited it is in comparison. And this illusion has been called Maya in the yogic tradition. So in a nutshell, to awaken to our true nature as one with Source is the purpose of life. This is why philosophy, however brilliant and deep, will always fall short of living that truth. It's only going to ever quench an intellectual desire. We utilize this philosophy to make sure our compasses are pointing to a true north of awakening, but it's not going to bring awakening itself. And I don't want to say never, because some people do have what's called a Satori experience, which is a sudden enlightenment, so kind of anything can trigger it. But for most of us, it's only going to come through direct perception and experience and continued practice of diving deep. So a lot of people say, okay, that sounds great, amazing. You know, I might have some quarrels, I might not, but where do we go from here? Like, what is the next step to actually bringing about yoga or union with Source? And the answer to that is known as sadhana. And sadhana is the lifestyle that a spiritual aspirant creates to aid their path to awakening or enlightenment. And this in the Indian traditions is the sadhana. So it pretty much means, how are you practicing bringing about this awakening? Do you have a meditation practice? Do you have an awareness practice? Every single thing in life, if you are present with it, if you are present with your connection to Source, becomes a part of your sadhana. Everything we do, from brushing our teeth to putting on our shoes to going to work, on top of our meditation practice and all of the other more spiritual quote-unquote practices, that's all a part of sadhana. And that's what we're doing here with the spiritual journey, is I'm taking you through my sadhana. I'm walking you through my week to week. I'm showing you the ups and the downs, the lefts and the rights, so that hopefully you learn something. And like I said earlier, if you have something you can teach me as well, please share. You know, it's a beautiful and brilliant path, and the thing I love most about it is that we all walk it in a different way. We might have similar techniques. We might do the exact same techniques every single day. It's still going to be completely unique to ourselves because of our own internal transformation. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to be taking you through my sadhana, and I will see you next time on A Spiritual Journey.